Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to another edition of Level-Headed News. I'm your host, Brenda. Here we are on the 6th day of December on Tuesday. News to bring to you. Boy, have I got news for you. The first one I have is off of Western Journalism, and it says Conway in Clinton email probe could continue. Hours after participating in a rancorous public forum in which Clinton campaign staffers accused the Trump campaign of pandering to white supremacists, Kellyanne Conway suggested that the Hillary Clinton email scandal could be revived after President-elect Donald Trump takes office. Conway's comments come 2 days after a key congressional Republican vowed to continue probing State Clinton's use of a private email server in order to determine what damage was done to United States secrets. Since his election day victory, Trump has sought to move on from his comments about prosecuting Clinton, likely in an effort to unify the country and move forward. However, as shown in Thursday's forum where Clinton campaign aides attacked Trump campaign, the anger engendered by the bitter campaign is far from over. During an appearance Friday on Good Morning America, Conway discussed the email scandal and any possible next steps. Officials who are in charge of such things in the Trump administration who may look at that again, Conway said. Trump is moving on to focus on future, not the past, she added, and he has said to the New York Times on the record he thinks that the Clintons have suffered enough. However, the Department of Justice committees, the FBI perhaps, can take a different look, she said, without revealing if Trump would support that action. While Trump may have moved on from the email scandal, it appears many of his supporters have not. During a Thursday rally in Ohio, Trump supporters chanted, lock her up," when Clinton's name was mentioned. They feel, Conway said Friday. At least one key Republican said the investigation into Clinton will continue. We can't just simply let this go, Chairman Jason Chavez, Republican of Utah, said on Fox News Channel America's Newsroom on Wednesday. If the president or president-elect wants to pardon Secretary Hillary Clinton for the good of the nation, that's their option, Chavez added. But I have a duty and an obligation to act or to actually fix the problem that were made with Hillary Clinton. Chavez said there is a vast difference between the emails as a political issue and the need to find the truth. A political election does not extinguish the need for transparency, truth, and justice, Chavez said. We want to get to the truth. He said that the full story of the email scandal has yet to be told. There are tens of thousands of documents the State Department still has not turned over to the United States Congress that should be available, he said. There's issues relating to the Department of Justice. I still think that the federal government needs to provide the Congress the records which we sought. The next article I have for you is off of 100%fedup.com. Fling it up here on the page. Here we go. 2-day results of Wisconsin recount are in, and Hillary's not going to like it. More than $3.5 million is expected to be wasted on the Wisconsin. How will Wisconsin residents feel when the overall result changes by 3 or 4 votes? That's off to their crybaby party, who has no problem burdening taxpayers with this ridiculous dog and pony show. Totals for day 2 show that Donald Trump has inched ahead by a couple additional votes. The Wisconsin Election Committee posts recount data on a spreadsheet every day. The latest spreadsheet totals as of 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on December the 3rd show that the recount isn't changing much, although a smattering of errors have been found throughout the state. each lost and gained a smattering of votes in towns, cities, and villages that are reporting, so any losses canceled out. The Election Commission doesn't tally the returns, but rather just posts raw spreadsheet of numbers. Heavy went through the spreadsheet and tallied the lost and gained votes for Trump and Clinton for each county so far, and then subtracted for a net gain or loss for day 2. Here's what the return shows so far. The day 2 totals: Clinton gained but lost 86 for a net gain of 3 votes. 8 votes but lost 92 votes for a net gain of 6 votes. Clinton gained 3 votes, Trump gained 6 votes. Net, Trump gained 3 votes on day 2. Trump won Wisconsin by more than 22,000 votes. That means that Trump inched ahead by a grand total of 3 votes in a recount expected to cost more than $3.5 million. Green Party nominee Jill Stein raised more than $6 million to fund recounts in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. The latter 2 recounts are now bogged down in legal issues and challenges. On December the 3rd, Stein drops her request for a Pennsylvania recount, saying she couldn't afford the $1 million required, even though she raised $7 million overall for the recounts. Have needed Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan to flip in order to take the White House back from Trump, an exceedingly tall order. Supporters sued to stop the recount, alleging it was not being conducted uniformly. Some counties use paper ballots and others use machines. Recount could continue at least until December the 9th hearing. The Wisconsin recount is the first in the 2016 presidential election. We all know this recount idea was hatched for the sole purpose of making Trump look like an illegitimate president. Pay for this, or should it be billed back to the DNC or to Jill Stein and Hillary's campaign? Next article is off BizPac Review. It says Nancy Pelosi. She says the Democratic Party doesn't want a new direction. Our values unify us. Nancy Pelosi said she doesn't believe people in the Democratic Party want to take a new direction during an appearance on Face the Nation on Sunday. Despite the Democrats' underwhelming results on election night, Pelosi said the party is not questioning its identity. Well, I don't think that people want a new direction. Our values unify us, she told host John Dickerson, and our values are about supporting America's working families. That's one that everyone is in agreement on. Unquote. A number of Democrats blamed her for the party's poor performance on November the 8th, with Ohio's Representative Tim Ryan challenging her leadership role, arguing if they don't change directions, they will soon become obsolete. Pelosi said it's not the direction, but the messaging that is off. What we want is better connection of our message to working families in our country, and that clearly in the election showed that message wasn't coming through, she said. But we are united in terms of security of our country, which is our first responsibility, to be smart and strong and not reckless in how we protect the American people, strong in how we protect our economy. Republicans praised her leadership win, saying as long as she is in power, they believe they will retain the majority. I think you're right. Oh, man. We have is a soundbite that I have to play for you, and this is Mike Pence is excited about Ben Carson's cabinet pick. So let me fire this up.
We're excited to have Dr. Carson as our intended nominee for housing and urban development. We're looking forward to another very productive week in the transition that's setting a historic pace. And I'll be spending some time in New York this week, and spending some time here at the Trump Tower, but I think the American people are rightfully encouraged and impressed at the speed and decisiveness that our President-elect is bringing to assembling a government that's going to make America great again.
Okay, there you have that. I thought you'd enjoy that. Ben Carson, so that's a new cabinet pick there for housing and urban development. The next one we have is off of Western Journalism. Former ICE agent bolsters Trump's campaign about illegal immigrants voting in presidential election. A former Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent bolstered President-elect Donald Trump's claim that large numbers of illegal immigrants likely voted in this year's election. On Sunday, Trump tweeted in response to those holding up defeated Hillary Clinton's lead of more than 2 million in the popular vote. Donald Trump's tweet says, in addition to winning the Electoral College in a landslide, I won the popular vote if you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally. Retired ICE Special Agent in Charge Claude Arnold told Fox News Bill O'Reilly Thursday night, I worked in 6 locations across the United States. I probably arrested more than 1,000 illegal aliens in my career, and I routinely encountered people who were in possession of voter registration cards. As a part of my interview of them when they were arrested, I would ask them, do you or have you voted? And often I would get the answer, yes, he explained. Arnold gave Los Angeles as a prime example where this sort of illegal conduct is happening. The former ICE agent said, so in every neighborhood where there is significant illegal alien population, there are at least several document vendors who supply the service of creating false forms of identification, including Social Security cards. He said the vendor usually sells a 3-pack authorization card, driver's license, and Social Security card for anywhere from $120 to $300. O'Reilly also pointed out the lax voter registration procedures in California, where voters are allowed to register online, and said he suspects the state's resources are not being directed toward verifying the information provided, which Arnold also believes is likely true. By the Western Journalism, Clinton was able to run up the score in the popular vote, so to speak, in California with its approximately 40 million people. Clinton carried the state with 8.6 million votes, Trump's 4.4 million, because the Electoral College is winner take all. Trump barely campaigned there. Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich pointed out, remember, in 49 states, Trump had 2.2 million vote majority, and then there's California. The mainstream media cast doubt on Trump's assertions in their reporting, called his claim about illegal immigrants voting baseless. NBC said Trump offered no evidence. Bloomberg News said he cited no evidence. And the Associated Press said Trump claimed without evidence Sunday that millions voted illegally in the national election. Politico went as far as using the headline, Trump's baseless assertions of voter fraud called stunning, and PolitiFact statement a pants-on-fire lie. Pressed about the issue, his campaign team offered some facts to back up the assertion. Campaign spokesman Jason Miller told reporters earlier this week, I'd point to the 2014 Washington Post study that indicated more than 14% of non-citizens both in the 2008 and 2010 elections indicated they were registered to vote. Yet I'd also point out some of the other examples that we had raised during the campaign. Some numbers include the Pew Research study, only 24 million, or 1 out of every 8 voter registrations in the United States are no longer valid or significantly inaccurate. And in that same Pew Research study, the fact that 2.5 million people have registrations in more than one state. The next one we have is off of Conservative Tribune, and it says, Carrier isn't the only company Trump's making a deal with. Insider reveals behind-the-scenes talks with others. Day after President-elect Donald Trump announced Tuesday that he had negotiated a deal with the United Technologies to keep 1,000 jobs at U.S.-based Carrier plant, his transition spokesman hinted that similar deals could be in the works. It's not just here with Carrier. We're going to see some future announcements as well with some other companies that are already working behind the scenes, spokesperson Jason Miller told Fox News. This is fundamentally going to help our manufacturing industry and so many other industries. Speaking on CNBC Wednesday, soon to be Secretary of State, or I'm sorry, Secretary of the Treasury, Stephen added that both Trump and Vice President Mike Pence intended to have open communications with business leaders, which would thus separate them from President Barack Obama and Vice President Joe Biden, whose relationship has been icy at best. You can see this started because President-elect called up the CEO of United Technologies, he noted. While neither Miller nor Mnuchin offered any precise details as to what other deals might be in the pipeline, news from the New York Times suggested that they could potentially involve Apple and Microsoft. During an interview with the paper last week, Trump said he had spoken with Apple CEO Tim Cook about constructing a new production plant in the U.S. versus nations such as China. He also admitted to having received a call from Microsoft CEO Bill Gates, but in the specifics regarding what was discussed. And an ad's popping up. Let me get rid of that. Okay, it says let's see. Though he had to step into office, the president-elect was already meeting his campaign promises to revitalize the economy, keep shipped overseas, and make America great again. So impressive were his feats, in fact, that even some of his fiercest critics were doling out praise to him. MSNBC host Cenk Uygur, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, who admitted on a YouTube video published this week that it was time to give credit where credit is due, according to Real Clear Politics. They got this deal done, and not only will it look great, but it actually saved 1,000 American jobs, he said. So there you have that. The next one that we have here is off of FoxNews.com, and it says, "You have a unique opportunity to defeat Islam. As a Muslim, I'm ready to collaborate." In the wake of the Ohio State attacks last week, perpetuated by a Somali student legally residing in the U.S., America again struggles to explain events. Islamic Relations was among the first to warn against retaliatory attacks against Muslims and linking the incident to Islam. Such statements are not only unhelpful, but deliberately obfuscate the reality. Islamist attacks are very much related to Muslims. All Islamists are Muslims, even though most Muslims are not Islamists. Islamism comes from within Muslim communities, and corruption of Islam nonetheless relates to Islam proper, from which Islamism steals and borrows. Without Islam, there could be no Islamism. But without knowing Islam, fail Islamism. Now, if you followed that, you're better than I am. It says President-elect Trump provides a serious, fresh opportunity to defeat Islamism. As an observant Muslim devoted to combating Islamism, I welcome this opportunity and I'm ready to collaborate. Why we have failed to the ideology that delivered 9/11, because we have been unable to examine and disable Islamism through frank speech. Dismantling Islamism demands we distinguish Islam, the religion, from Islamism, the totalitarian ideology. Trump's commission on radical Islam is the first step towards doing just that. On Capitol Hill in 2012, I argued for exactly such an examination when I testified in the 5th investigative King hearings. 5 years on, the United States remains in advancing understanding of Islamism, restrained by President Obama's refusal to acknowledge Islamism. Claiming Islamophobia, this refusal, championed by much of the American intellectual press through both Obama administrations, confines public disclosure. Ironic, since refusing to acknowledge Islamism is the ultimate Islamophobic act. This denial has several negative effects. First, U.S. military and strategic thinkers are hindered by identifying threats and planning efforts to counter both violent and nonviolent Islamism. Unable to discuss Islamism, they cannot engage insight from informed public intellectuals. Federal agencies were prevented from using words vital to such discourse. Second, but far worse, Muslims like me, observing Islam, but avowed combatants of Islamism, Islamophobia. While our views are marginalized on the basis of Islamophobia, we are simultaneously denounced as Islamophobic by both Reformed and Islamist sympathizing Muslims who seek our silence. The net result, the space examining Islamism narrows stifling debate. Islamism wins. Further, because of the prevailing attack of understanding of Islamism out of fear, the uniform turn to loathing Muslim en masse and real anti-Muslim xenophobia issues even normalizes as France grapples with today. It's time we reverse. Try that again. It's time we reverse Islamophobia. Certainly, I decried NSA advisor designate Lieutenant General Mike Flynn's remarks about Islam being a cancer and Islam is a political ideology. As I have discussed here, reporting on these remarks, which I do consider xenophobic to Muslims. The New York Times described him as an anti-Islamist general, revealing its extraordinary confusion. If Flynn is a committed anti-Islamist and not an anti-Muslim xenophobe, we are in a great position. Islamism is the single most compelling threat to secular liberal democracy. Islamism is a political totalitarian ideology, a 20th century creation which masquerades as Islam, a 1400-year-old monotheism. Islamism is both nonviolent and violent. Radical Islam is a violent component of Islamism. Nonviolent Islamism, institutional Islamism, seizes organs of democracy to shore power. Violent is merely a means to an end. Muslim political science Bassam Tibi delineates the 6 foundational tenets of Islamism. First, the relentless seeking of new world order via imposition of a global transitional dictatorial caliphate. Islam as an Islamic state, and only as an Islamic state, Arabic, appears nowhere in the Quran, but was manufactured by the 20th century founding fathers of Islamism. Islamism seeks its establishment within democracies. Islamists understand the potency of installation through popular vote. So they are very keen to stand in election. Think Mohammed Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood Party in Egypt post-2011 Arab Spring. To attain power, they rush to seal the democratic causeway behind them. All totalitarianisms need an external enemy. Muslimism is no different, hence the third tenet. Muslimism holds Jews and global Jewry as chief enemy manifestation and anti-Semitism with religious overtones as central to its ideology, a startling departure from Islam, which demands Muslims accept Moses as holy prophet and the Torah as sacred. Achieving this aggressive reordering of world order requires Islamists pervert Islam's classical jihad into evolutionary terrorist jihadism. Evolutionary terrorist jihad renders not only as sanctioned, but as sacrament of targeting non-combative civilians. This violence defiles a number of Islamic principles, including the denouncement by Islam of the taking of any innocent life, and foundationally, un-Islamic pursuit of any unjust war, and the defiling of God's creation, both his vice-regent in mankind and earth itself. The fifth tenet is Islamist Sharia law, an invented version of, try that again, an invented version to impose totalitarian rule without historical precedent. British scholar Sadat Kandrai identifies the Islamist appetite for pitiless punishment, a form of justice lacking in Islam. Finally, Islamists are consumed with craving for authenticity and purity, spending all their energies asserting theirs is the true Islam, and the rest of us, Muslim or not, are all imposters. In my case, as believing Muslim who defies their Islamism, a treasonous heretic committing blasphemy or worthy of death. This is why Muslims like me, immersed in deep study of Islamism, welcome the new Trump administration appetite to advance our nation's insights and interest by examining radical Islam, an inquiry that mirrors the interests of the wider Muslim world itself. As a nation, we may come to the necessary realization slowly and with difficulty because of the intensely inflammatory climate surrounding such debate. Triggering calls of McCarthyism. But if we remain silent, both Muslim and U.S. interests will suffer greatly. Anti-Islamist Muslims must lead the way, and we are already. Try it again. Anti-Islamist Muslims must lead the way, and we are ready to rise to the occasion, she says. It's Quanta A. Ahmed. She's an associate professor of medicine, State University of New York, honorary professor, Glasgow Caledonian University School of Public Health. She's currently a Ford Foundation Public Voice Fellow with the Opt-Ed Project of In the Land of Invisible Women, a female doctor's journey in the Saudi Kingdom. So there you have that information. For you is off the conservativetribune.com, and it says, alert, Reddit moves to suppress pro-Trump content. While conservatives and other right-leaning Americans have utilized social media to the fullest to join together to share their thoughts and opinions and push back against the progressives ruining the country, it's no big secret that the progressives maintain full control over the various platforms being used. Control they aren't always afraid of asserting. Facebook has been found to limit the reach of posts from some conservatives, while Twitter has been seen to temporarily silence or even completely ban those with wrong sort of ideological leanings. Even the seemingly free-for-all Reddit has gotten in on the authoritarian suppression of conservatives, as the CEO recently admitted to personally editing certain posts and limiting the reach of insanely popular subreddit by supporters of President-elect Donald Trump. Town Hall reported that Reddit CEO Steve Huffman, who goes by username of u/spez, that's u/spez, edited a number of posts in the subreddit /r/the and an underlined Donald own name from the post, critical of him, and replacing them with the names of moderators of the pro-Trump community. After lack for that, Huffman issued a lengthy apology and promised never to do it again, although he revealed in the same post further action he was taking to suppress the reach of entire subreddit in question. I'm sorry for compromising the trust y'all have in Reddit, and I'm sorry I created work and stress for, particularly over the holidays. Huffman wrote, it's heartbreaking to think that my actions distracted people from their family over the holiday, instigated harassment of our moderators, and may have harmed Reddit itself, which I love more than just about anything. And an ad trying to pop up. Let me get rid of that. Okay. After mentioning how divided the nation currently is and revealing the mixed reviews he received for trolling the trolls, he nevertheless admitted that he now realized what he did was wrong and far more significant than merely changing the names contained in a few posts. Yet, Huffman still felt the need to take some sort of action against those he termed toxic users, particularly those from the r/the_Donald community, and announced a new policy that will effectively suppress posts from subreddit from being easily seen by users outside of that community, according to the Daily Caller. Sticking on the r/the_Donald will no longer appear in the r/all, he declared. R/all is not our front page, but is a popular listing that our most engaged users request, including myself. The sticky feature was designed for moderators to make announcements or highlight specific posts. It was not meant to circumvent organic voting, which the r/the_Donald doesn't, to slingshot posts into r/all, often in a manner that is antagonistic to the rest of the community. He also added that he and his fellow admins would still pursue action against the most troublesome users that could range from simple warnings or timeouts to a total ban from the entire platform. To be sure, as private business, Reddit is fully within its rights to decide who is permitted to use its service, and most certainly should address serious instances of bullying or harassment that go beyond the pale. That said, the whole idea of social media platforms like Reddit and others is for like-minded and open-minded people to be able to come together to speak their minds and share their thoughts with others, something that becomes increasingly difficult when their particular message is suppressed or those relaying the message are silenced or banned. This looks strongly like yet another progressive attack on free speech from those with ideologies that differ from their own, and it must not be allowed to continue unchecked, for if it is permitted to proceed, it will only get worse, and sooner rather than later, all voices opposing the disastrous march of progressive socialism will be silenced. All I have is off of BizPack Review, and it says, Jill Stein runs into Chris Wallace buzzsaw in the most painful recount grilling yet. Fox News' Chris Wallace absolutely obliterated former Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein for her ridiculous recount campaign. Wallace pointedly asked why, if her efforts are not partisan, Stein didn't choose states like New Hampshire, where Hillary Clinton won by a narrower margin than Donald Trump won in the states. Stein said she couldn't have petitioned for a recount in New Hampshire because the deadline had passed. In fact, that didn't stop her from pursuing recount in Pennsylvania. But the discussion got personal when Wallace confronted Stein on her motivation based on the fact that there is no chance the votes would switch to give her a win in any state. You get in, Dr. Stein. How many votes did you get in the election? Wallace asked. Excuse me, how many votes did Donald Trump get? He got about 2.5 million less votes, Stein said. He got 62.5 million votes. How many votes did you get, Dr. Stein? Wallace fired back. Stein tried to change the topic, but Wallace persisted. He got 62.5 million votes. How many did you get? I mean, the question really is, who's speaking for American voters, him or you? Wallace asked. Stein insisted that she didn't expect to benefit from the recount herself, but that the American people are the ones who want the recount. Where do you get off saying that American people are calling for this? He said. I think the vast majority of the American people think we should accept the results of the election. And there's video in this if you want to pull it up and take a look at it. All of these URLs are in the description of the video, so you can check out any of them for whatever information you'd like to get. The next one's off of Western Journalism, and it says, Trump moves to block Stein's recount efforts in Pennsylvania. President-elect Donald Trump had filed a complaint to stop a vote recount in Pennsylvania. The move comes on top of the same actions in Michigan and Wisconsin. Green Party candidate Jill Stein, with the backing of Hillary Clinton's campaign, is seeking recounts in all three states, which went for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2016. But Trump was able to move to his win column this election. Despite being no more than a blip on the electoral radar, Stein has now commandeered Pennsylvania's electoral process with an eye toward doing the same to the Electoral College. The complaint filed Thursday states there is no evidence or even an allegation that any tampering with Pennsylvania voting system actually occurred. Stein garnered approximately 49,500 votes in the Keystone State to Trump's 2,953,000 and Hillary Clinton's 2,885,000. The filing deadline of November 21st already passed before Stein made the call for the recount, but the Green Party candidate has filed suit in state court for partial recount in over 100 precincts in Pennsylvania. The state has more than 9,100 precincts. The precincts Stein wants recounts are in and around heavily Democratic Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, the Associated Press reported. Is reminiscent of former Vice President Al Gore's legal maneuvers in the aftermath of 2000 presidential election, when his team only wanted to select county of Florida recounted. Clinton carried the Philadelphia 584,000 to Trump's 108,000, according to the local blog Billy Penn. In order for an automatic recount to be triggered, the difference between the candidates must be 0.05% or less. However, the current difference is 1.1%, so the threshold was not met according to the state's posted results. Meanwhile, the recount in Wisconsin is going forward over the Trump team's objections, the New York Times reported. Trump won the state by 22,177 votes, which is the first time a Republican presidential has prevailed since Ronald Reagan in 1984. Stein's recount efforts in Michigan are currently on hold after Trump's legal team objected. The cost to carry out the recount in state would be $4 million, according to Secretary of State Ruth Johnson. Many of these costs would be acceptable if Michigan law really did entitle Stein to a recount, Trump's team wrote in the objection, but it does not, and there's no reason to rewrite Michigan's election law to accommodate the conspiracy-minded request of an acknowledged loser. Trump won the state by 10,700 votes, according to the official results. An automatic recount in the state is triggered when the difference is 2,000 votes or less. Johnson said in a statement Wednesday, "It is unusual that the candidate who received just 1% of the vote is seeking a recount, especially when there's no evidence of hacking or fraud or even credible allegation of any tampering." Michigan Attorney General Bill Schulte filed a suit on Friday to end Stein's recount demand in his state. Jill Stein received fewer than 52,000 of the more than 4.7 million votes cast in Michigan's election for president. Yet she now alleges that she is a aggrieved candidate and demands a recount that has no possibility of changing the result of the election. The lawsuit states, adding, "We have asked the court to end the recount which Stein is pursuing in violation of Michigan laws that protect the integrity of our elections." The next article that I have here is off the dailycaller.com, and it says, Kellyanne Conway takes 17-year-old social justice warrior to the cleaners. Kellyanne Conway unleashed on a young woman who asked her Wednesday how Conway can rationalize working for Trump despite the multiple sexual assault allegations raised against him. According to The Hill, Conway told the high school student that women are tired of the same argument and the same thing you are presenting to me right now. I'm glad that people looked at the allegations and said, you know what? That's an argument that will not create a single job in my community, not bring back a single one of the 70,000 factories that have been closed, will not deter one member of ISIS from doing their bloodletting here or anywhere else in the world, Trump's former campaign manager continued. Furthermore, Conway pointed to how, though she has the first ever female president nominee, she only earned 56% of the female vote. She should have gotten 62%, Conway emphatically stated. It should be noted that the young woman who identified herself as McKay Lestraw Corn is the daughter of Mother Jones Washington bureau chief David Corn. So another plant to cause problems and hate and discontent. The next one we have is off the conservativetribune.com, and it says outrage. Before leaving, Obama enacts rules to take $3,000 from every American. Even though President Barack Obama has only has less than 2 months left in office, he hasn't stopped his liberal agenda, and he hasn't learned that American people are tired of regulations. American Action Forum reported that America has just passed an important milestone. The 10-year regulatory burden on Americans has now passed $1 trillion. New Environmental Protection Agency regulations on trucks were what finally pushed the regulation costs over $1 trillion. Put another way, each American now will have to fork over a one-time payment of $3,080 for those new regulations, or an annual cost of about $540. Thanks, Obama. These payments could come in a number of ways, such as fewer jobs and higher taxes, pretty much all of the negatives associated with having bloated and corrupt federal government. And an ad trying to pop up, we'll get rid of that. And it says, as if that wasn't bad enough, thanks to all these new regulations, the estimated number of hours for all paperwork is 754,208,700 hours, according to the report. There are 8,760 hours in a year. So the paperwork for these regulations will only take roughly 86,097 years for one person to complete. Or more realistically, the paperwork would require over 377,000 people working full-time at 2,000 hours per week to process. None of their work will add any value to the U.S. economy. And Obama is probably going to try to push through more regulations before he leaves office. Can we make the lives of Americans even more miserable before Obama moves out of the White House? Yes, we can. This is exactly why the founders wanted to keep the size of government small. Trump promised during the campaign, and it was posted on his website, that he would cut back federal regulations drastically. We can't afford this much regulation. While there is no arguing that some regulation is a necessary evil, the federal is off the rails with the number of regulations being enacted. Almost all of them by unelected career bureaucrats. It's time to cut back these regulations, ease the financial burden on taxpayers, and let the economy grow once again. On his promises, or else America is in serious trouble. The next article that we have is off of theburningplatform.com, and it says, Sandy Hook promise video mask the group's true anti-gun nature. On Friday, the gun control group Sandy Hook Promise released a video. It's a short video detailing two students trading messages on a desk without knowing who the other is. When they finally meet on the last day of school, a shooter interjects into the scene, and the video proceeds to cycle through several shots in the video that had no focus in the prior clip. It is important to note that the gun rights and gun control groups stand in unison on this issue. We are all working to identify troubled individuals looking to do harm and make sure they get the attention they deserve. No one takes issue with SHP working to cut down on gun violence. However, of Sandy Hook Promise and what the group has done since its inception, I do have a big issue with the group's practices, including this video, which is very misleading at best. At worst, the group's claim to offer help that it does not provide, and it's disingenuously offering to educate the public as a way to promote their own gun control agenda. And the video is in this article if you want to pull it up and take a look at it. I'm not going to play it here. I don't want to get any. So I'll leave that to you. But it says, clearly the child in the video has serious issues. He appears to be bullied and not have any friends, with no one paying him any mind. Perhaps if the MSM didn't blast out every school shooting for days, troubled youth wouldn't feel as though they could just copycat the Columbine shooters to posthumously receive the attention they never got in school. If you have issues with my attacks on media coverage of shootings, ask yourself if the media gave similar coverage to a bus driver who asked kids if they were ready to die before he crashed the bus, killing 5 and injuring over 20. Because I've heard the media cover the recent Ohio State shooting more extensively, were far fewer casualties, with only fatally being the shooter himself, or the fatality. The media is feeding into the rash of Columbine copycats, and SHP is not helping by getting troubled teens recognized for unspeakable conduct. Turning to SHP itself, it's led by Nicole Hockley, who lost a child in the Sandy Hook shooting. I feel for the loss suffered by Hockley and all the other Sandy Hook families, and no law or NRA safety training will ever give her solace in her loss. Nonetheless, her practices are as head of the SHP are aimed at eviscerating the Second Amendment and her quest for revenge without any regard to gun owners' rights. Moreover, she is known to lie and distort the facts and will stop at nothing to harm gun owners and manufacturers. I mention manufacturers because although I can find no evidence that SHP was directly a party to the frivolous lawsuit against gun manufacturers that was was recently tossed out, the fact that the families of 10 victims leads me to being nearly certain that several members of Hockley's group were plaintiffs in that ruling. Bearing Arms detailed quotes from the lawyers for the families as referring to all owners of AR-15s as notoriously incompetent. Hockley also stated that SHP has created a guide to inform people on the warning signs of gun violence, but Bearing Arms was unable to locate such a guide, only finding questionable statistics in addition to their platform. Firearm News did a closer examination of SHP and found the following. The group delivered petitions to New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, urging him to sign legislation limiting magazines to 10 rounds in the Garden State. SHP supported the draconian new gun laws in Connecticut. SHP's communications director appeared in an ad for anti-gun Connecticut Governor Dan Malloy. SHP was honored by the anti-gun New Yorkers against gun violence. Clearly, this group has a history of promoting a failed gun control agenda. It's best to downplay its true goals to garner support from the general public. They will wait until another emotional shooting takes place to put forward their calls for further restrictions on gun owners' rights. Hockley and SHP have demonstrated that they are not above using questionable emotional appeals to promote their gun control agenda. Honestly, I have no problem with the PSA route they are taking beyond my issue with possible promotion of copycat attacks. However, SHP has shown no willingness to engage with gun owners to try to work together to identify troubled individuals and to attack the causes that lead them down the troubled path in the first place. Far more effective if they had the support of an organization that represented millions of gun owners. Perhaps if they had started that way, instead of blaming the gun industry and promoting gun control, maybe gun rights and gun control groups could have worked together to make a difference. Like it or not, the NRA is the #1 training organization in the USA for gun safety. If SHP control groups were really serious about doing something other than restricting the rights of gun owners, they would extend the olive branch and ask the NRA and NSSF to work together on gun safety training instead of using emotional promos to further their gun control agenda. The next article that I have for you is off of abcnews.com, or well, try that again, abcnews.go.com, and it says, colleagues paint caustic portrait of artist colony founder. This is about the Oakland warehouse fire that took place Friday night into Saturday and Sunday. The last I heard, there was a confirmed, I believe it was 37 dead, and they expected to find more bodies. This was earlier this evening, or earlier yesterday evening. So it's a sad state of affairs going on there. Right. This article says leaving at least 36 people dead. I think it was up to 37 when I heard last. It says the founder of ramshackle Oakland artist colony, where dozens of people burned to death, guru, and loved to surround himself with followers, but showed chilling disregard for their well-being, according to relatives, neighbors, and acquaintances. Derek Ion Amenia, age 46, leased and operated the cluttered warehouse where fire erupted Friday night during a dance party, leaving at least 36 people dead in the nation's most lethal building fire in over a decade. Since the fire, Amenia told San Jose television station KNTV that he felt himself to be like a grandfather to all those young artists who had lived in the warehouse with his family. Neighbors and occupants of the building said he had illegally carved it into rented living and studio space for artists, calling it the Satya Yuga Collective. On Monday, prosecutors watched over the scene to preserve evidence as bodies were pulled from the blackened ruins. Alameda County District Attorney Nancy O'Malley said that if prosecutors believe criminal charges are warranted, charges could range from involuntary manslaughter to murder. Acquaintances painted a devastating portrait of Almenia and his longtime partner, Micah Allison. Honestly, I don't think he's capable of feeling any kind of remorse or guilt, said Allison's father, Michael Allison of Portland, Oregon. I've never seen him ever really care about anyone else. He described the couple as users of methamphetamine, heroin, and crack, and said their 3 young children were taken away from them by social service authorities for several months beginning last year. The youngsters were found hungry, infested with lice, and ill-clothed, he said. Michael Allison recalled Almenia and Micah overcome with laughter once when they told of a fire breather accidentally setting himself on fire at one of their many parties at the building, which was widely known as the Ghost Ship. Almenia surrounds himself with people who are going to treat him like he's some sort of guru, said Danielle Bordeaux, who said she was a friend of the couple's for 8 years. He enjoyed having minions around to do his tasks for him and help build this great, he thinks he's building this artistic empire. On Monday, Almenia said the couple was sorry for all those who lost loved ones in the fire. I gladly give my entire life of fortune, of wealth, of experience again and again and again. And I say this to you, I say this to the camera and whoever is watching me, that thing, Almenia said with Micah Allison by his side. In a Facebook post hours after the fire, he made no mention of the deaths, drawing criticism online from people who knew him for perceived callousness. Everything I worked so hard for is gone, he wrote then, while noting that his partner and children had been safe at a hotel during the blaze. Survivors recounted having to struggle to escape the burning warehouse, where many of the victims were on a makeshift second floor served by rickety staircase wooden pallets. Visitors described the structure as a warren of scrap wood sofas, old pianos, and electrical cables. Investigators have declined to say whether they believe Almenia or the building's owner bear any responsibility in the deaths. Oakland building inspectors had opened an investigation into a warehouse last month. Acquaintances and local authorities described repeatedly confronting Almenia about what they saw as an unsafe and unsanitary condition for his children and others living there. Noel Gallo, a city councilman who lives a block from the warehouse, said Almenia essentially told authorities to mind their own business. He had an attitude, Gallo said, a big attitude. Almenia is on probation until 2019 after pleading no contest to a misdemeanor charge of receiving stolen property. A former landlord accused him of stealing her Airstream trailer. The pair was part of an alternative scene in California that revolved around Burning Man and other festivals, music, sexuality, and drugs, acquaintances said. Neighbors and colleagues said the family moved to the building in East Oakland's former industrial Fruitvale neighborhood in late 2012. or early 2013 and quickly began leasing space in it to others. They threw frequent parties open to the public for fees collected at the door, acquaintances said. Neighbor Phyllis Awakazoo said her family befriended the couple's oldest daughter, now 12 or 13, when they realized how neglected the children were. The girl would stay with them during frequent parties at the warehouse, and Wakazoo's family would make a point of feeding her. We noticed, oh my God, she was hungry, Wakazoo said. When the girl took Wakazoo on a tour of the warehouse, Wakazoo saw that the place had no kitchen, and the family's tenants were apparently bathroom where they used a hose to shower. Almania previously worked as a marijuana grower in Northern California's Mendocino County. Michael Allison said Almania would make himself out to be a man in charge of his fellow pot workers and managed to avoid work, Allison said. He was able to cast a spell on someone in a weird way that I just do not understand, Allison said, as passive and easily swayed by Almania. He recalled both his daughter and Almania laughing over another episode in which partygoers at one of their gatherings trashed a social hall by flinging cans of paint on walls and furniture. A few years ago, Micah Allison's family talked her into entering drug rehab, only to have Almania persuade her to leave again, her father said. Some who knew the couple were bitter at their escape. I hope the same thing happens to them that happened to those people. Shelley Mack, who said she's rented living space in the warehouse 2 years ago from the couple. She said they knew it was dangerous. They profited on this and never spent a dime on anything but partying. The next article I have is off of All News Pipeline, and it says, Christmas snowflake lunacy hits new levels of absurdity, violating religious freedoms and rewriting classics. While many would agree that Christmas celebrations have been overly commercialized, it does not change the very basic fact that Christmas is a day that billions around the world commemorate as the birth of Jesus, and yearly war on Christmas is actually a war on religion, which is reaching new heights of absurdity. War on religion rages on. Multiple religions celebrate different holidays in December, such as Christmas on December the 25th for the birth of Jesus, or Hanukkah, which is the commemoration of the rededication of the Holy Temple, the Second Temple in Jerusalem, and is celebrated at any time from late November to late December in the Gregorian calendar, just to name a couple. Rather than allow everybody to celebrate the holiday they are commemorating by displaying decorations associated with it, colleagues across America discouraging and in some cases banning any decoration that might offend some delicate little snowflake that cannot handle the fact that others may celebrate a different religious holiday than the ones they do. So rather than being inclusive by allowing any of the any and all of the decorations, the colleges listed below are excluding anything that represents the true meaning of the holidays in question. For example, Missouri State University offers guidelines on what is generally inappropriate decorations to be displayed in common areas, which include the nativity scene, cross or crucifixion, a menorah, Star of David, star and crescent, drawings of Jesus and Muhammad or Muhammad, and the Bible or Quran. It is also of interest that the University of Missouri also produced a list of what is acceptable, which includes Santa, decorations, who is described by Wiki as Santa Claus, also known as St. Nicholas, St. Nick, Kris Kringle, Father Christmas, or simply Santa, of Western culture who is said to bring gifts to the homes of well-behaved, good or nice children on Christmas Eve, December the 24th, and the early morning hours of Christmas Day, December the 25th. Another school did try to ban Santa once, but try that again. Another school did try to ban Santa, but once that made the news, they backtracked pretty fast. Oregon State University offers suggestions, which include focus decorations on winter season by using images that are not associated with religious traditions. Snowflakes, snow sculptures, sleds. Remember that images that seem neutral to some may be experienced as religious by others with different traditions, they wrote. Perhaps the school or dictator's administration should be reminded that the holiday being celebrated are in fact religious holidays. Therefore, they are not being inclusive and respectful as they claim when they attempt to dictate that religious symbols are not appropriate as decorations for religious holidays. It doesn't even make sense. The same goes for Rowan University, who takes things a step further and actually states what is allowed, as shown in the following quote from their holiday decorations in the workplace notification. These are best practices guidelines that the State Equal Employment Opportunity Office and Rowan University support regarding decorations in the workplace. Please be respectful of all beliefs and the various observations that occur this season as well as at other times of the year. And office decorations are allowed as long as no obvious religious icons are displayed. Examples of religious decorations include, but are not limited to, the nativity sets, menorahs, etc. Examples of allowable season decorations include, but are not limited to, greenery, Santa, lights, snowflakes, snowmen, candy canes, etc. Please be advised that any and all participation in holiday activities is voluntary and non-participation should not be viewed negatively. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact the Office of Equity and, or it should be Equality, it says Equity and Diversity at extension 5440 off campus and gives the phone number. It says see more examples at campus reform. Make no mistake, the communists that have infiltrated the colleges across America are not just declaring war on Christmas, full-on war against religion itself. Proof of this assertion comes from University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, where students are required to complete 30 hours of service learning in order to earn their diploma. And so those hours have been earned by attending a lecture on how Planned Parenthood has contributed to society or participating in White House Student Film Festival on social justice. The two young women that led classes at Catholic Church, which includes kids better their reading skills, understand from some Latin phrase, and learn about biblical history for her service learning hours, have been told those hours cannot count toward that requirement. Those two young women have now filed a lawsuit against the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire. Travis Barnum, an attorney for Alliance Defending Freedom, which filed the lawsuit on the women's behalf, stated in a news release that no public university should ever use a community service program as a vehicle to advance and install anti-religious bias. He argues Eau Claire's service learning policy is violation of religious freedom as it favors non-religious practices to religious ones. Wisconsin, Eau Claire wants to require its students to perform community service. It must treat all forms of community service as equal value, Barham stated. The Constitution and federal court precedent prohibit it from targeting religious community service and denying students credit for it. That kind of animosity toward and discrimination against religion is unconstitutional. While schools are conducting their war on religion, it seems that some Christmas snowflakes are continuing their war on Christmas itself, as they have decided well-known songs heard during the Christmas season, Baby It's Cold Outside, is sexually aggressive, and therefore have rewrote the song to make a point about sexual consent. Found on most all classics Christmas song soundtracks, was written by Frank Loesser in 1944. Originally recorded for the film's Neptune Daughter, but sung by some of the most well-known classical artists such as Dean Martin, Bing Crosby, Doris Day as duet, Louis Armstrong and Velma Middleton, Kristen, and many others throughout the years. Feminists have not to the dumbed down thinking processes of snowflakes have attempted to educate the poor little social justice warriors by pointing out the original lyrics were reflective of the time period. Via magazine, an article entitled "Listening While in Defense of Baby It's Cold Outside." If we look at the text of the song, the woman gives plenty of indication that she wants to stay the night. At the time period the song was written in 1936, good girls, especially girls, did not spend the night at a man's house unsupervised. The tension in the song comes from her own desire to stay and society's expectations that she'll go. And the organization of the song, from stopping by for a visit to deciding to push the line, staying longer the entire night, which is really pushing the bounds of acceptability. Her beau is repeatedly, or try that again, her beau in his repeated refrain, "Baby, it's cold outside," is offering her the excuse she needs to stay without guilt. What's next? Banning White Christmas because it's racist? Oh, wait, that's last year that a fake petition to ban White Christmas was created and college kids actually signed it. As a side note, it's nice to see that a November 2015 promise by Donald Trump is being kept. Trump said this whole thing with political correctness, and I always say you don't see Merry Christmas anymore, right? Because it's not politically correct. Guess what, folks? When I win, if I win, when I win, whatever, I will tell you we're going to be saying Merry Christmas again. That I can tell you. Whether it's religious holiday and college campuses showing a lack of tolerance and respect for those that celebrate the holidays is because other snowflake students cannot handle seeing anything that may offend them, or the lunacy of attempting to rewrite classic Christmas tunes because of some imagined wrong. Snowflakes around the country appear to be incapable of dealing with real life. Imagine social justice warriors using the same type of nonsensical arguments when applying for a job that they are allowed to get away with in college. The excellent parody below highlights how that's going. And they have a couple of videos here that you might want to take a look at. They're pretty funny, and I think you'll enjoy them. Again, all these URLs are in the description, so you can pull this stuff up and take a look at them yourself. The next article I have for you is off of campusreform.org. I can't make this stuff up. This every time I get into the news, I'm just more overwhelmed by what's out there. This one says, puppies massages to ease exam stress. And we're not talking about grade schools here, with kindergartners. We're talking about colleges. And this is how it goes. With final exams approaching, some universities are offering their students stress relief measures such as puppies, acupuncture, and massages to ensure they don't get too stressed out. The University of St. Thomas and the University of Louisville are both offering hot chocolate bars and puppy petting sessions as part of their stress-busting events. The University of North Carolina, Wilmington goes even further, offering massages and acupuncture at its relaxation station. And there is a message here that I think it's supposed to be a tweet that's been sent out by the UNCW Campus Recreation. And it says, need to relieve some stress with finals quickly approaching? Check out the relaxation station on reading day. Snacks and more. It's a great study break. Be sure to take a minute or two to stop by. And then the article says, with final exams approaching, some universities are offering their students stress relief measures such as puppies, acupuncture, and massages to ensure they don't get too stressed out. The University of North Carolina, Wilmington, for example, is providing its students with a relaxation station complete with a number of stress-relieving activities like puzzles, coloring, massages, puppies, and even acupuncture. Need to relieve some stress with finals quickly approaching? Ask the UNCW Campus Recreation. Check out the relaxation station on reading day. It's a great study break. The Post also lists snacks twice as an extra reminder to students scrounging for free food during finals week. Other schools have also jumped on the puppy bandwagon, including the University of St. Thomas, the University of Utah, and the University of Louisville. The University of St. Thomas will supplement its 2-day stress-busting service with puppies with a fully loaded chocolate bar, while the University of Utah will be serving students pancakes. Wellness and Practice will be hosting puppy therapy along with a hot chocolate bar with fun and delicious toppings. Please join us for this stress-relieving event, reads the UST event description. The Finals Fest event at the University of Louisville includes a day filled with activities for stressed out students. Early in the morning, Louisville students can grab hot cocoa from the cocoa cart, and in the afternoon, they can frolic with borrowed puppies in case they're missing their furry friends back home. Students then have an evening opportunity for food, massage, yoga, and bingo in the library. How about some free food and massage while you take a break from study? Visit us in the lower level of the library that evening. We will be serving breakfast for goodness crepes and Cracker Barrel, playing bingo, and most of all, relaxing post final fests. Finally, visitors to the Women's Center at the University of Missouri, Kansas City will have the opportunity to color, meditate, and attend knitting workshop at the Stress Buster event. I can't make this stuff up. I mean, I might expect that kind of stuff to go on in a kindergarten class, but I certainly would not expect to see it in a college. It's final exams week. It's time to cram. It's time to get that information in if you haven't studied during the quarter or during the semester. If you studied, you should already know all that stuff. It shouldn't be that big of a stretch for you to have your information together to take your final exam. And what's going to happen in the workplace when these people get out of college, if they ever really intend to get out of school? Some of them may think they're going to make a career out of it and never. But if they're going to get out and get a job, is that what they expect their employers are going to do? Say, oh, we have this contract that we got to get completed and we got to get this information together, but first we're going to have a relaxation session. Are you kidding me? There's a whole lot of people that better figure out what's going on in the world. Wow. Liable to be a lot of melted snowflakes. We have is off of newsmax.com. General Mills to cut as many as 600 jobs globally. You know, we've had Kellogg's in the news the last couple of days with their foolish behavior and their GMOs and, how they're all of us with their pesticide-infested food and everything else that they're doing and, into politics. Well, General Mills now, maker of Cheerios, said it would cut as many as 600 jobs globally as part of a new organizational structure and eliminate the position of International Chief Operating Officer. As part of the new organizational structure, the company will be split into 4 business groups: North American retail, Europe and Australia, Asia and Latin America, and convenience stores and food services. The company said its French dairy unit, which makes Yoplait yogurt as ice cream, would work independently with each of the 4 business groups. Minneapolis-based General Mills has been struggling to boost sales as customers increasingly shift to less and sugary foods. The company has been cutting costs amid sales decline that has lasted for 5 straight quarters. General Mills said the savings from these changes will help it achieve its fiscal 2018 adjusted operating profit margin target of 20%. 39,000 full and part-time employees as of May 29th. I'll offer them a suggestion that might save those jobs, and that would be, instead of cutting those people, why don't you make sure that you have food that is, there's no GMOs in what you're producing, and that you don't have pesticides, pesticide foods in your product, and advertise it as such, have it certified as such, provide a healthy product, and you'll knock Kellogg's out of the market, able to buy Kellogg's for pennies on the dollar, take over their entire line, and produce more jobs. Just a thought. But hey, that's why nobody puts me in charge of anything. The next one we have here is off of businessinsider.com. It says Facebook working on a plan to pick news from favored media partners like Snapchat. Facebook is working on a new feature that will showcase lists of curated content from publishers directly from newsfeed, according to two people familiar with the project and internal documentation seen by Business Insider. It's called Collections and Functions, similarly to Snapchat's Discover section, which showcases news stories, listicles, videos, and other content submitted by hand-picked media partners. Facebook, media, and entertainment companies in recent weeks to create content for collections, but has not given a time frame for when the feature will be made available. A Facebook spokesman declined to comment for this story. Facebook's effort to create collections comes to distinguish between high-quality content from established media outlets and the glut of low-quality fake news stories that go viral across the social networks. The company has faced sharp criticism for its role in spreading fake news stories during the U.S. presidential election. The move could also help Facebook forge stronger ties with publishers as it competes with fast-growing Snapchat. Discover section of youthful tabloid-esque news stories as seen in every day by its more than 150 million users. Early collection partners have been told that content they create will be inserted into the newsfeed by Facebook, effectively giving them direct and potentially much broader access to social networks' vast audience of 1.8 billion users. Currently, publishers must either garner likes content to be seen in the newsfeed or pay to boost their exposure through Facebook's sponsor post program. If collections will feature advertising, and if so, whether Facebook will share the ad revenue with publishers or offer publishers an option to monetize the content themselves as it currently does with instant articles service. Another sticking point could be the extent to which Facebook shares data about readers with publishers and how easily it will be for publishers to bring readers to their websites. Facebook has historically had difficulty getting directly involved with new curation. The company's latest experiment with curated content from publishers was a breaking news app called Notify that the company shuttered earlier this year after only 7 months. The social network's trending news section came under fire earlier this year after it was reported that Facebook's editors were suppressing conservative-leaning news items from appearing on the list. The next article that I have for you is off of conservativetribune.com. Mnuchin has goal of returning Freddie and Fannie to private industry. Two of the biggest companies in the mortgage business, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, are currently under the thumb of the federal government, but President-elect Donald Trump's new Treasury Secretary, Steven Mnuchin, wanted to change that. On Wednesday, Mnuchin appeared on Fox Business Network and discussed, among other things, his desire to privatize the two firms that were embroiled in the late 2000 subprime mortgage crisis and to date own around 60% of all home loans in the United States. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were bailed out by the federal government in 2008 to the tune of $187.5 billion, according to the Daily Caller, which also reported that the two companies' profits were collected by the Department of Treasury after 2008. Many free market proponents have blasted the bailout for years, and now Mnuchin has spoken out about how he sees the situation under a Trump administration. We've got to get Freddie and Fannie out of government ownership. It makes no sense that these are owned by the government and have been controlled by the government as long as they have, Mnuchin said Wednesday. Mnuchin's comments have energized investors, which has sent stocks of both Fannie and Freddie up to their highest levels since 2014, Rutgers reported. And trying to play, we'll get rid of that. The Treasury Secretary designated expounded further. Let me just be clear. We will make sure that when they are restructured, they are absolutely safe. The restructuring process will be with the goal of making sure the firms don't get taken over again, according to Mnuchin. We've got to get them out of government control. It looks like, so far, Trump made a solid pick in Mnuchin, a man who clearly understands that if this country is going to thrive, government needs to get out of the way. And I could not agree with that more. I mean, you know, if you think about this, those of you who are listening to this that own homes, if you have a government loan, a Freddie Mac or a Fannie Mae, and your house not paid off, you actually have this mortgage, and it's, you know, it's a government mortgage, Freddie and Fannie. If you default on that loan, the government takes your house. It's not a privately owned mortgage by a bank. This is a government mortgage. So if the economy fails, and I think we pretty much know that's what's bound to happen here, when the economy fails and people can't make their house payments anymore, the government is going to own 60% of the housing. According to this article, 60% of the mortgages are government mortgages with Freddie and Fannie. So the government's going to own or have a monopoly on the housing. And that is not right. That's got to stop. The next one we have here is off of naturalnews.com, and it says, mercury and autism. New research provides yet more damning evidence that mercury exposure leads to ASD. Natural News says, you won't find this research conducted anywhere in the United States or Europe. Nearly all scientists who attempt to explore the real science linking mercury exposure to autism quickly find themselves discredited, defunded, and blackballed from science journals. That's because status quo vaccine science isn't science at all. It's just dogma pretending to be science. The real research on mercury, vaccines, and autism is being pursued outside the US and the UK, where powerful pharmaceutical corporations can't exercise totalitarian scientific censorship against dissenting views. Now, new research has emerged from top Egyptian universities that documents yet more evidence of a relationship between mercury exposure and autism. Published in the journal Metabolic Brain Disease, the new research is entitled Altered Urinary Proliferations and Mercury Exposure as Biomarkers for Autism Severity in Egyptian Children with Autism Spectrum Disorder. The study found that children with high biomarkers for mercury and lead were strongly correlated with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. The study abstract reports. It says urinary proliferations, I guess, I don't know, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, were evaluated within the three groups using high performance liquid chromatography, or HPLC. After plasma evaluation of mercury, Hg, and lead, Pb, in the same groups, results showed that children with ASD, had significantly higher levels of Hg and Pb. The profferins, and then now here's a good one, pentacarboxyl profrin, I guess. And there's, I don't know, 4 or 5 other things here that I can't pronounce, compared to healthy controls and healthy siblings of ASD children. The research found strong relationship between mercury toxicity and the presence of autism, and a direct correlation between levels of mercury toxicity and the severity of autism symptoms, writes Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in an EcoWatch article covering the same study. Explain how this new study is not an outliner, but rather further confirmation of the strong link between mercury exposure and autism. At least 6 American studies have linked autism presence or severity to mercury exposure as determined by measuring urinary porphyrins. The first study, completed by Hire in 2012, showed a correlation between the presence of autism and specific urinary porphyrins associated with mercury toxicity. This affirmed an earlier study by Kern in 2011, where specific porphyrins associated with mercury toxicity were significantly higher in ASD children as compared to non-autistic controls. And this article goes on with more of the scientific jargon here in that study, if you want to pull it up and read that for yourself. And the article goes on and says, another alarming finding from the study shows strong correlation between dental amalgam or mercury fillings in mothers and the risk of their children being diagnosed with ASD from the abstract. Mothers of ASD children showed a higher percentage of dental amalgam restorations compared to the mothers of healthy controls, suggesting that high Hg levels in children with ASD may relate to the increased exposure to Hg from maternal dental amalgam during pregnancy and lactation. Note that you would never see such a statement being issued by the US or UK scientists, no matter how convincing the data. America is a scientific dictatorship that bans dissenting views on mercury, vaccines, dental fillings, and even climate change. There is no debate allowed, and all data that contradict the establishment's dogma are discarded or censored out of existence. As long as the US scientific dictatorship remains in power, the establishment will suppress the truth about mercury and autism. Even now, the dishonest mainstream media continues to falsely report that thimerosal hasn't been removed from all vaccines, even when the mercury-based preservative is still routinely used in flu shots given to children. So there you have that. Then this last one, this is kind of your feel-good. And this is a story I'm just going to read to you. And it has a moral at the end of it, so bear with me. And it's off of ourworldgirls.com, and it says, Mom humiliated son for buying a Christmas tree. Years later, her response shook him to the core. And it says, since the early 15th century in Germany, people had been using evergreens as a symbol of the Christmas season. The nostalgic tradition is magical, but sometimes life's circumstances don't allow for sentimental preference. The story below highlights one such situation. It's the story of a boy coming from a poor family who spent his hard-earned money on a Christmas tree when his father couldn't afford one. Read the tale below and be reminded of the true meaning of Christmas. The story of 1949, the Christmas of 1949, we didn't have a tree. My dad had as much pride as anybody, I suppose, so he wouldn't just say that we couldn't afford one. When I mentioned it, my mother said that we weren't going to have one this year and that we couldn't afford one. And even if we could, it was stupid to clutter up your house with a dead tree. I wanted a tree badly, though, and I thought, in my naive way, if we had one, everybody'd feel better. About 3 days before Christmas, I was out collecting for my paper route. It was fairly late, long after dark. It was snowing and very cold. I went to an apartment building to try to catch a customer who hadn't paid me for nearly 2 months. She owed me $7, which, to my surprise, she was home. She invited me in, and not only did she pay me, she gave me $1 tip. It was a windfall for me. Now I had $8 whole. What happened next was totally unplanned. On the way home, I walked past the Christmas tree lot, and the idea hit me. The selection wasn't very good because it was so close to the holiday, but there was this one real nice tree. It'd been a very expensive tree, and no one had bought it. Now it was so close to Christmas that the man was afraid no one would. He wanted $10 for it, but when I, in my gullible innocence, told him I only had 8, he said he might sell it for that. I really didn't want to spend the whole $8 on a tree, but it was so pretty that I finally agreed. I dragged it all the way home, about a mile, I think, and tried hard not to damage or break off any limbs. The snow helped to cushion it, and it was still in pretty good shape when I got home. You can't imagine how proud and excited I was. I propped it up against the railing on our front porch and went in. My heart was bursting as I announced that I had a surprise. I got Mom and Dad to come to the front door, and then I switched on the porch light. "Where did you get that tree?" my mother exclaimed. But it wasn't the kind of exclamation that indicates pleasure. "I brought it up Main Street. Isn't it just the most perfect tree you ever saw?" I said, trying to maintain my enthusiasm. "Where did you get the money?" Her tone was accusing, and it began to dawn on me that it wasn't going to turn out like I'd planned. "From my paper route," I explained. I explained about the customer who'd paid me, and I spent the whole $8. Or she says, "And you spent the whole $8 on the tree?" She went into a tirade about how stupid it was to spend my money on a dumb tree that would be thrown out and burned in a few days. She told me how irresponsible I was and how I was just like my dad with all those foolish, romantic, noble notions about fairy tales and happy endings, and it was about time I grew up and learned some sense about the realities of life and how to take care of money and spend it on things that were needed and not on silly things. She said that I was going to end up in the poorhouse because I believed in stupid things like Christmas trees, things that didn't amount to anything. I just stood there. My mother never talked to me like that before, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I fell off and began to cry. Finally, she reached out and snapped off the porch light. "Leave it there," she said. "Leave it there until it rots, so every time we see it, we'll be reminded how stupid the men in this family are." She then stormed upstairs to her bedroom, and we didn't see her until the next day. Dad and I brought the tree in, and we made a stand for it. He got a box of ornaments, and we decorated as best we could, but men aren't too good at that sort of thing. And besides, it wasn't the same without Mom. There were a few presents by at Christmas Day, although I can't remember a single one of them, but Mom wouldn't have anything to do with it. It was about the worst Christmas I ever had. The fast forward to today. Judy and I married in August of 1963, and Dad died in October that year. So over the next 8 years, we lived in many places. Mom sort of divided up the year, living with my sister Mary or with us. In 1971, we were living in Wichita, Kansas. Lincoln was about 7. Brendan was about 3, and Kristen was a baby. Mom was staying with us during the holidays, and on Christmas Eve, I stayed up very late. I was totally alone with my thoughts, alternating between joy and melancholy, and I got to thinking about my paper route, that tree, what my mother said to me, and how Dad tried to make things better. I heard a noise in the kitchen and discovered it was Mom. She couldn't sleep either and had gotten up to make herself a cup of tea, which was her remedy for just about everything. As she waited for the water to boil, she walked into the living room and discovered me there. She saw my open Bible and asked me what I was reading. When I told her, she asked if I would read it to her, and I did. When the kettle began to whistle, she went in and made her tea. She came back and we started to talk. I told her how happy I was that she was with us for Christmas. Now I wish Dad could have lived to see the grandchildren and enjoyed the time because he always loved Christmas so. It got very quiet that moment, and she said, "Do you remember that time on 12 Mile Road when you brought that tree with your paper money?" I said, "Yes, I've just been thinking about it. She hesitated for a long moment, and as though she were on the verge of something that was bottled up so deeply inside her that it might take surgery to get it out. Finally, great tears started down her face, and she cried, "Oh, son, please forgive me." That time, at that Christmas, I've been so burdened on my heart for 25 years. I wish your dad were here so I could tell him how sorry I am for what I said. Your dad was a good man, and it hurt me to know that he went to his grave without ever hearing me say that I was sorry for that night. Nothing will ever make up for what I said, but you need to know that your dad never did have any money sense, which was all too true. We were fighting at the time, though not in front of you. We were 2 months behind on our house payments. We had no money for groceries. Your dad was talking about going back to Arkansas, and that tree was the last straw. I took it all out on you. Doesn't make what I did right, but I hope someday when you were older you'd understand. I wanted to say something for very long, and it's finally out. Well, we both cried a little and held each other, and I forgave her. It wasn't hard, you know. Then we talked for a long time, and I didn't try this again. Then we talked for a long time, and I did understand. I saw what I had never seen, and the bitterness and the sadness that had gathered up in me for all those years gradually washed away. It was marvelously simple. The great gifts of this season or any season can't be put under the tree. You can't wear them, you can't eat them or drive them or play with them. We spend so much time on lesser gifts, toys, sweaters, jewelry, the mint, anise, and dill of Christmas, and so little on the great gifts, understanding, grace, peace, forgiveness. And it's no wonder the holiday leaves us empty, because when it's over, it only reminds us we have the dirty dishes and the January bills. What matters and what is lasting is this: loving those you hold dearly and using the season to show it. And here is the moral. Here's the takeaway. It's never too late to heal a relationship, even when things seem broken beyond repair. A little humility and a measure of forgiveness will make all the difference. I hope it's a beautiful day where you are. I hope that you can get out and take a deep breath of fresh air, soak up some earth energy, ground yourself, and be glad you woke up above ground. You get another chance. Many people don't.